the drive was from my dad. Actually, he really wanted to have a fruit and veg store. That was a big deal for him, and there's some really lovely old photos and stuff from him setting it up. And it was a really traditional fruit and veg, grocers. And Dad had his grocer's jacket on, and he was going into the market in Smithfield at 4 a.m. and bringing back his produce for the day. And they were all getting used to, Jesus, how do we stop the avocados from rotting but get them ripe, and all that sort of stuff. All those things you get on with as a grocer. And I think over the period of maybe 4 or 5 years anyway, my mum, who'd had huge trouble with eczema, like really huge trouble with eczema all over her body, she found some benefit in macrobiotic diet, and also some benefit in certain kind of supplements, which were only beginning to really come on stream at that stage, I think. And so the shop evolved, became almost a macrobiotic kind of sourcing food store, and lots of mung beans, a lot of ajuki beans and that sort of stuff, and then just evolved into sort of the creature that it was up until 2011, where we shifted again towards fresh food, really. The first store was in Harold's Cross. It was called What on Earth. I hope I don't get this wrong, my mum will slaughter me if I do, but it was What on Earth for at least, I think, a year or two. Mum hated the name What on Earth, and so Dad, under duress, changed it, and it became the Hopsack. And there was a lot of home brew as well. It was a big influence from my dad. Funnily enough, he was, to his up until his demise, was making amazing elderflower wine and that sort of stuff, and it was a big factor in the shop as well for a while, as part of this, I suppose, getting people kind of to empower people to take on things for themselves, and DIYing food, in whatever way, shape or form. And certainly homebrew was a big movement in the late 70s, early 80s in Ireland, and a lot of people were doing it. And a lot of people still have, I think, a lot of demijohns hanging around in the shed that they haven't used for 20 or 30 years probably at this stage, and nobody knows what to do with it. But it's becoming, again, a big staple part of our offering. We're talking about fermentation again a lot on the shop floor, and giving out scobies of kombucha and water kefir and milk kefir, and we've run courses in that as well. And it's all kind of these things always come full circle, I suppose. So we had a really tough few years. Mum, obviously, especially in 2008. We had yes, we're a very whole foodie family. We all have vices, I suppose. One of Dad's big vices, which I think we all kind of attribute his quick demise to, was he restored old cars, lovingly restored old cars, and the fumes when Dad was spraying, and he would have literally restored them from ground up, welding everything from chassis up, and did some really beautiful work. And some of the cars that he rebuilt are still around the place. We still see them, which is gorgeous. Some big Austin Healys and stuff. But he was a sucker for not having a properly vented workshop. And some of the stuff we've learned since about even just the oil being drained out of those old cars, out of the sumps that have been in there for 30 years, and the PAH's, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which we all learn a lot about these days. Dad was probably being exposed to a lot more than we knew about. And so in August of 2008 he got ill with what we thought was the flu, and unfortunately after 3 weeks, when he seemed to be recovering, we'd gone down the acupuncture route, the natural medicine route as far as we could. He was taking herbs. He had some kind of lymphatic issues long term anyway. He knew those sorts of things were there, and so he was kind of doing his best on that front, and then went to some very good acupuncturists to start taking some Chinese herbs from, I think he went to Stephen Gascoigne that time, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Stephen Gascoigne, was it? And then sort of things weren't happening, so he dovetailed that with going to see some conventional, we went through a GP, did standard tests, urine analysis and stuff, and things were okay. A bit of blood in the urine, heavy flu, maybe that's nothing to be worried about, and that's what we were sent home with. Seemed to be recovering in week 3, and then suddenly a Thursday morning he came in from dropping post out to, or Friday morning, right, he came in dropping post out to the letterbox, and came in and kind of staggered in the door, and Mum was like, "What's wrong?" So something was really wrong, and he very suddenly passed away. Had a huge bleed on the brain and very suddenly passed away. So he was suffering from a very acute form of leukemia, reasonably rare, and for a man of his age as well. He was reasonably fit and healthy. You just never know what you're dealing with in life. And I think that's one of the things that's taught all of us, that every single day you got to grasp things, because they're not going to be there forever. So tough time, but we're in a good place now, and I hope you'd be really happy with what we're doing. I guess that's the trick between the farm and the shop. The farm is a big and growing factor in the Hopsack's success, and in terms of our endeavours to, I think when Dad passed away, we were left with this option: do we offload this hunk of a farm, beautiful 46-acre organic farm down in Roscommon that we didn't know what to do with? None of us are farmers, and when Dad was around, he was doing it largely by himself. He wasn't really one for kind of teamwork on that sort of thing. It was really his own hobby, his own project, in the same way as classic cars, where he'd just disappear into it, and whatever, you come back and you'd see what had happened. And we all got involved for certain big issues, but he rebuilt 2 houses on the land and Anyway, so we came around 2008, and Dad was gone, and we had to really rethink what we were going to do. And myself and Mum certainly felt really strongly that we kind of had to, for Dad's sake and maybe for our sake, keep this going. And so for 5 or 6 years we sort of hobbled on. I was sort of learning on the go, and jeepers, I mean, I had some really scary moments, some very steep learning curves dealing with cattle. It's there's no joke, you can go really wrong really quickly if you don't know what you're doing with livestock. And I'm very lucky to have a neighbour of ours who's like my fairy godfather, as I call him, PJ, although he probably wouldn't appreciate that term. But PJ has been kind of a rock for me, and so like the last 2 years I've begun to really kind of get a grip on it, understand what we're doing, and try to work out, okay, we're not doing this just for Dad's legacy. This has to be something that makes sense for the now and makes sense for the future. So I installed 2 polytunnels. We did that for 6 months. Installed 4 more. We did that for another year, and now I've got another 2 large tunnels as well, and 2 more on the way. So we're going to be up at 8, 9 polytunnels, doing quite a bit of organic horticulture, and we've got 2 fantastic partners, Ted and Christine, who are actually probably going to burst in on us in a few minutes. So we're due to meet them, and that's kind of where the farm is going. I think I have all sorts of ideas. I really love producing food. I think it's been such an important thing for me to do, because I think it's given me an actual purpose. You feel like you're fighting a battle all of a sudden. You feel like you've got this sort of mission. It's strange. It sort of comes from nowhere. It sort of grows, and suddenly you realize you're absolutely, like, intangibly but inexorably really tied to the food and where it comes from. And you find yourself having to bite your lip and not evangelize too much about the life, about farmers, and how it's important that we're growing, and it's important to nurture that, and then the death of family farms and all these sorts of things that are actually, I think they're a big part of Ireland's culture. They're a huge part of our story, but we're largely we get pissed off at farmers, I think, and when we're living in the city, it's very easy to be disconnected from that, and it's becoming a fashionable and hopefully a lasting thing for people to talk about where the food comes from, and to care about where the food comes from. And I think that is going to be a huge benefit to future generations if we keep that up for more than just a fad. We have not got enough to supply the people who want our produce. We're really lucky that by dint of some hard work by my colleagues down on the farm, Ted and Christine, and myself, we've got a product that people really want. So we've gone to, Fallon and Byrne take a lot of our produce, and we've got a couple of other restaurants as well that are interested. We have about 7 or 8 places that we just can't supply, and we'd love to have our stuff there. So we're expanding all the time, but with any business where there's no huge money behind the Hopsack, it's all coming out of our own pockets, and trying to make these things work and grow in a sustainable way, which is what my parents always did, and I'm trying to learn their lesson, because I'd say I would probably have the tendency to go quicker than I should. So yeah, trying to do things step by step so that it becomes something that we can really nurture and build on for the future is a big factor. I think that has to be everything that we're doing, really. I think that's let food be your medicine is our motto, and I know that's bandied around a lot these days, but in 1979 it was one of Hippocrates' phrases that probably wasn't as well known, I'd say. And I think for us it's a real thing. Food is medicine, genuinely, and I think we've been lucky that people have given us the opportunity to give them the sort of help that we give, and we've also got an amazing team of people inside, and one of the things that we don't shout about from the rooftops, because I think if you do, you're in danger of a big fall. But we put a lot of effort into our staff and the training of our staff, so that we have people in there who are on the shop floor, myself included. My mum is always there as well, who can actually give people some really decent, sound and reasonably kind of profound health advice. And we've seen some amazing, turnarounds in people's health, like really amazing turnarounds. Even like I can think of a couple in the last week who, one guy who was having huge problems, energy problems for 2.5 years, was coming into us trying different things. Eventually it was such a simple thing, but it was just about moving carbs out of his diet, and he'd been through a lot of specialists, and there was a lot of worry about what, was there a deeper thyroid condition, what sort of underlying problems were going on, and he's largely kind of carb free and has gone down that route, that kind of paleo route, and it's bouncing around, and it only took a few weeks once his body switched on to it. And I think I love that when it's really gratifying when people bother to come back into us to tell us, they're fixed, because we're never fixed as human beings, but they've taken a big step forward, and it's very gratifying for us. Last week we had a vegan raw dessert making workshop, which was great fun. We had 2 Italians in doing like traditional Italian desserts. So like tiramisu, granitas, these sorts of things, but all raw, all vegan, which is really exciting. So yeah, education is great, and I guess that I think a lot of therapists are realizing now as well that they can get a lot more out to people by running things in a seminar way, rather than just talking on a one-to-one basis. That there's a huge scope out there for education, and also kind of in a way that education doesn't have to be as tightly reined in. It can be kind of a broader thing, and more conversational, and I think people enjoy that method of learning more, and they get more from it, and it's more practical, it's more hands-on. Those are the sorts of things that we'd like to do more of, and we'll be running more on our farm as well, growing courses and some kind of little horticulture courses, and more fermentation, definitely more fermentation workshops towards the back end of this year, I'd say. Firstly, I'd say we're part of the Irish Association of Health Stores. That sets this group of around 100 health food stores apart from the rest of the country, and in that we have very particular training standards. We have always an ethical base, whereby everybody who signs up to the IAHS is there for the good of the community, rather than for the financial gain, which means that it doesn't always work out in everyone's favour. It can be dangerous to go into business for those reasons as well. But if profit is the bottom line, you're never going to make a proper health food store. I think people sniff that out pretty quickly. I think for us, as opposed to other health food stores, even within the kind of independent health food store sector, we have a huge focus on giving people, the net rather than the fish. So trying to give people capabilities to help themselves, and in every consultation we have, there is always a focus and a drive to kind of to give them the little bits of information, be it if they come in with a toothache, then we end up talking about maybe oil pulling, maybe other kind of ongoing dental practices that could be useful for them, or maybe we look at holistic dentistry and send them on that route if they have a baby who's coming in with chronic constipation or something. Craniosacral therapy, infant massage, all those other sort of things that maybe form the backbone of where the parent is going to be able to help their child, rather than just giving them a chamomile, fennel, whatever, fenugreek tea, or sending them away with a dose of probiotics. There's so much more that people get from that. I think it's fun. It's really good fun when people you feel people engage immediately when you stop selling things to people, and I think that's what we get a kick out of. I think people get confused sometimes when they're used to other health food stores. They're used to Holland and Barrett, say, and it's horrible to pick out one big nasty chain, but that is the big nasty chain. But yeah, people instantly they can feel the gear shift, I think, when they come and chat to us, because nobody in my staff is financially incentivized to sell you extra product. We're not looking, there's all these sorts of awful terminologies like link selling and this sort of stuff. We're never engaged in that. We're looking to give people what's right for them, and quite often it means when people come in saying, I want to get fish oils, we'll say, what is it for? They'll say, well, it's for any number of things, essentially anything that it's inappropriate for, and we'll kind of say, well, actually, it's the wrong thing for you. You know, put down the fish oils, pick up the silica, whatever it is. You know, there's quite often there's different approaches that we take that are, you know, less about supplementation, more about food for a start. I suppose that's a big factor, because we certainly have been engaged for the last 36 years in trying to interrupt that paradigm, that pill popping paradigm, which is beginning to happen. People are beginning to understand that, you know, they can make little, whatever it is, nuggets of, you know, powerful health food goodness, you know, with cacao and magnesium and whatever, barley grass and goji berries and bee pollen and all these things, and they can make essentially, you know, medicine balls, but they're fun and they taste good, and we were always kind of realigning people where we can to kind of get them towards enhancing their lives through their diet. Really, that's the thing. Like, it's interesting to see where things are going. I think probably one of the differences between us and the Happy Pear is we're very much engaged in health freedom, whereas they're about selling people healthy food, which is great, and feeding people in a healthy way, and that's great, and that's a big shift for most people as well. Health freedom is a movement that's been necessary ever since there's been a pharmaceutical industry, essentially, because the interests of the pharmaceutical industry, unfortunately, and I mean, we don't talk conspiracy theories in here, but they are about the bottom line. They're about dividends, shareholders. They're not about making people well, and occasionally, by dint of whether it's a scientist who wakes up and cares, or it's a drug that happens to do good, it's by dint of by accident, it seems, by virtue of accident, rather than any sort of great drive when the pharmaceutical industry, you know, produces something that helps people. I think they're in terms of lawsuits against them for adverse drug reactions and drugs that are on the market with false claims and dangerous drugs, and iatrogenic disease, I think, is one of the biggest causes of death, or which are essentially is death by medicine, which sounds crazy, but it's a big cost to the Western world, to our governments, and as a result to us as a population. We've lost some really powerful herbs from retail sale as a result of this. The legislation, things like St. John's wort, ginkgo biloba, and the licensing authorities now who deal with it in Ireland are dealing with what's called the Traditional Herbal Medicines Product Directive, the THMPD. They tend to take this sort of legislation to the letter, and sometimes beyond the letter of the law, whereas other countries like maybe Holland and a couple of others would have a much more liberal view, and they would look at directives coming to you with much more a greater degree of skepticism. In Ireland, we kind of go, whoop, yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir, and we will absolutely implement that, and yes, they'll be off the shelves tomorrow, you know. And it's just not sensible, because it means we're not questioning things, and it doesn't end up being leaving the best things behind on our shelves. And as an industry, we've been present for 40-50 years, and altogether I think there's not a single case of a severe adverse reaction from anything taken from a health food store in Ireland. And I think we list on the causes of death that are listed by the Medicines Bureau in the States. Death by supplements is just below death from swallowing whole bars of soap on the reasons list in terms of the ranking, and it's not even a handful, and most of these are from illegal supplements like ephedrine, and these sorts of things that are on sale that shouldn't be on sale, and where people are selling health foods and supplements responsibly. It's a powerful way for people to take some of the control back from the state and take some of the pressure off a totally overburdened health system. We all know is one of the biggest problems facing us in Ireland, with diabetes as an epidemic and all these sorts of things that are really growing. It seems totally nonsensical to restrict a trade that's facilitating people to use their own budget to help themselves and take pressure off the state. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know where they're coming from, and the only the only way I can understand it, the only way I can metabolize it, is that there has to be some sort of lobbying interest that's controlling it, because otherwise, why would you? It doesn't make sense.